What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. I'm once again joined by Tyler, and we are back for another video in our God of War community series, a community series that airs every single Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, leading up to God of War releasing exclusively on the PlayStation 4 on April 20th. We have one video after this one left, and then we are done with our God of War community series. Then the game will actually be out. We're going to be having a giveaway on that game, and then we're also going to have videos after the game comes out. We'll be playing it live, so on and so on. Just also to know, I did play God of War 3 Remastered this past Sunday, but I'm also going to be finishing the game this upcoming Thursday. So if you didn't watch on Sunday and you want a chance to win God of War 3, definitely come back to the channel tomorrow night and watch me as I finish the game, playing it live, and you'll be entered for a chance to win God of War 3 Remastered on the PS4. So in this topic, we've talked about a lot of the mechanics of the game. Before, we've talked about Kratos being immortal. We've talked about if the game is going to work in general. And again, we've gone back to Kratos as a character, being good or bad. In this video, we want to talk about kind of like this Last of Us effect and how God of War, and we've talked about this in past videos, but we really want to dive into this. God of War is heavily, if it's not already clear, heavily inspired, I feel, by The Last of Us. And you can see its image on God of War from everything we've seen in this game so far. And we kind of want to talk about, is this a trend that's going to continue? What does this mean for future Sony exclusives? Like, what does this mean for the future? Is it actually a bad thing that games are doing this? And so we're going to go back and forth. And so I just want to quickly say, I feel like in a way it could be, because, we had The Last of Us. So let's go through the history real fast, and I am going to hand it over to Tyler. We had the history of The Last of Us, right? Phenomenal game, one of the best games ever made. Uncharted 4, obviously, was next from Naughty Dog. And Uncharted 4 was, if it's not, again, clear, super The Last of Us-y. The game felt, obviously there was a companion character throughout the entire thing, not new for Uncharted, but definitely took pages from The Last of Us's playbook. Obviously the side conversations and stuff you could have for characters were literally The Last of Us things, but overall you could feel the influence of The Last of Us. Understandable, because it's Naughty Dog, it's Neil Druckmann, it's literally the same people, so that's understandable. With God of War, it's a interesting point, because God of War is heavily The Last of Us. I mean, if you didn't watch my live stream for God of War, definitely maybe go back and watch God of War 3 or God of War 2, because it's actually scary how different God of War, this PS4 one, is going to be. The game is just so different. And yes, you have a side character. That's just one part of it. But the camera's closer, right? The more emotional story, the more character-driven story, the more even in a linear way kind of story, it screams The Last of Us. And I'm not ready to say that like it's a bad thing. I think for this game it could be a very, very good thing. But there's no doubt The Last of Us's footprints are all over the place in this God of War. And is this going to be a problem going forward? Like, are all Sony exclusives going to do this? We have Days Gone coming. We have Horizon Zero Dawn 2, you'd have to imagine, coming. We have more. Detroit, even Become Human. We'll have to see how that game kind of acts. But we have a lot of these exclusives coming, and so it is interesting to see, like, are these games actually going to have The Last of Us's, like, footprints throughout the games? And is that actually a bad thing? So, Tyler, what do you think about all that?
I don't know. I'm actually a little bit nervous, only because, like you said, like, I think this is kind of what God of War needs or needed. But when I was watching you do the live stream, as I was telling you off camera or off, recording, this new God of War compared to the other older God of Wars, they aren't even remotely similar. They are so different, which we obviously knew, but now, like, seeing, like, somebody play God of War 3 again compared to, like, seeing obviously the recent new God of War, like, gameplay, totally completely different games. And if this wasn't called God of War and it was called something else, everyone would be like, yeah. We would never even say, like, hey, that's like God of War. No, we would never say that. It isn't like God of War at all. But here's my concern, and you were kind of like talking about that, is obviously The Last of Us worked extremely well. Great game. I love that game. It's one of the best games I've played. And, Naughty Dog took that, did something similar with Uncharted 4, with the interaction. Like, it was more. Like, not that Uncharted didn't do that kind of before, but there was just, it just felt more like The Last of Us, which was good, right? because we wanted more of The Last of Us. In like Uncharted, like Alex and I always said, because Alex loves Uncharted, I used to say to Alex, like, Uncharted would be a lot better if it was more like The Last of Us. So cool. Good job, Uncharted. Awesome. You're done. Goodbye. Now God of War, who is not obviously made by Naughty Dog, is a lot like The Last of Us. And then don't forget, The Last of Us Part 2, which according to people is coming out this year, which they're completely insane. It's absolutely not. But it could be next year, right? And my concern is that, obviously when Part 2 comes out and people buy the console, PS4 or whatever, or they haven't played The Last of Us Part 1 yet, so they go and they get The Last of Us Remastered. And let's all say that The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. Let's all say that The Last of Us Part 2 comes out May of 2019, okay? And in March or April of 2019, some people say, and there's actually viewers who have said, like, I have never played The Last of Us. And it's like, well, what are you doing? Go get it. But those people, because it's going to be right before, they want to do it fresh. Even people like Alex and I will go back. We will probably play The Last of Us Part 1. There'll be thousands of people that do that right before Part 2. And we'll be like, you know what's weird? Like a year ago, we played God of War, and it was exactly like this. Like, it was a little different, but it was a lot like this. And then we'll play The Last of Us Part 2 and be like, what's really weird? Obviously, The Last of Us that we just played a month ago or 2 months ago was a lot like this, Part 2. But a year ago, I played a game, it was called God of War, and it was a lot like this. And that's going to happen, and that's going to be weird, because they're totally different games, made by completely different developers, and they're very, very different, yet at the almost core, like the way that the game works with the kid companion, and obviously Ellie will be a teen this time, but for The Last of Us Remastered, she's not, she's a kid. The kid, she's doing stuff, you're doing stuff with them. Hey, look, what's over there? Like that kind of stuff. And like we'll have 3 games, or 2, but Alex and I especially, because I know I'll play The Last of Us 1. I'm sure you will right before Part 2. And so we're going to have 3 games in a matter of literally almost a year time span, because God of War obviously comes out in April. If Part 2 comes out next April, next May or next June, which it probably will, we'll be playing The Last of Us Part 1 basically a year from now. And we're going to be like, man, in a matter of 1 year, we have 3 games where we had this companion say, hey, what's over here? What's this? What's that? Telling the stories, and it's like, man, these are like the same games, just like reskinned and just, stories different. And here's my concern. What happens if 4 years down the line for Horizon, or even Horizon 2, not even 4 years. Let's say Horizon 2, let's say they add a companion, and we get, hey, what's over there? And it's like, oh my God, what is happening? And it slowly becomes, it's going to be open world, let's say. But let's say, like, the camera kind of comes a little bit closer, and we're more up on Aloy, or however you say her name, her back. And then you get the companion. It's like, what is happening? Because that would probably come out February of 2020 or something. I wouldn't be surprised. And it's like, again? And what happens if a couple years later we get a new Infamous, or we get something else, and it's like, well, you know what? It's going to be a fresh take. It's like a reboot, clean slate. And what do? They add a companion, because it worked for God of War. Last of Us did it. Horizon might have. And it's like, is this what we do when we want like a reboot, but not a complete reboot? Is we make it like The Last of Us because it works so well? I hope not. Like, is this like a one-trick pony where it's like, well, it worked, so let's just do it? That is my biggest concern, because it almost seems like it, because we already know that a lot of, not just Sony, Microsoft, all that stuff, we already know that Last of Us is a recognized game. The style is extremely recognized. There's just something about it. Yes, it's kind of like Gears of War, like the closeness and all that stuff. There's other games that have done it, but there's something about that companion interaction that's different. And then the up close and like personal and more personal storytelling and like, more emotional and all that stuff. But I just hope that they, and by they I mean developers, don't think that it's like, well, the only way to do that is if we have the Last of Us style video game. Like there are other ways, and I'm not a developer to come up with that idea. But that's up to them. But it's just, I don't know. Like I like the God of War's doing this, but and again, I haven't played it, and it totally could work, and that's not the point. Because I actually know that it will work, but that isn't the point. The point is 6 years from now or 5 years from now, am I going to look back and say, because don't forget, there's going to be more God of Wars, which means that they're going to be this style. Like 5 years from now, am I going to look back and are we going to say like, hey, Assassin's Creed is like this now. God of War, obviously, we got another Last of Us. We got this game, we got that game, we got that game, and they're all like The Last of Us. And it kind of becomes what is happening. It almost becomes like Telltale, where they're all the same style games, it's just a different skin. And it's kind of like, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. So I don't know. To me, I'm slightly concerned about the success. Honestly, it's the success, and this sounds messed up, but I'm actually concerned about the massive success that God of War has, because we already know that The Last of Us had a massive success, and we know that God of War will have a massive success, and we already know that The Last of Us Part 2 will have an even bigger success than probably God of War and The Last of Us put together. But they're all going to be the same style game, and that's what's going to make devs say, maybe we should try it. Similar style, but we'll change a little bit, but overall it's going to be the same thing. So that's my fear, and it's almost like it's a good fear to have, but at the same time it's like, yeah, but I'm the one who's playing these games. Like I don't want like Kingdom Hearts 5 or 6 in 2042 to be this style. I want games to be different styles. Like Final Fantasy, real fast, like 15, they had companions, but that was totally, that was different. It was just different. They still did that kind of stuff, but it was different. It wasn't like The Witcher. It was just different. It was like kind of like their own thing. I'd rather have devs do that than kind of be like, well, it worked for The Last of Us, it worked for God of War. So I don't know. I don't know if Alex, if you have anything else to say, but that's my biggest thing.
So I definitely agree. I think, the thing that I like about Sony a lot is they let their developers, and I talked about this in some Gamescast at some point in time, is they let their developers really have freedom. And that sometimes backfires, and maybe in terms of like Quantic Dream and Media Molecule and things like that, or even Sucker Punch. But, that's one of the main benefits that developers always talk about when they work with Sony. And so when you think about, this style, The Last of Us, I agree with Tyler. There could be a need to copy. I mean, if it works, keep doing it. But at the same time, like, it worked because, like, it was just something so special. I mean, think about when The Last of Us came out. It was just such a special game, a game that really no one had ever done before. And now we are starting to get these clones. We're starting to see these influences in other games. Now, that's not to say that you don't take good influences of games and put them in other games. Half-Life is a game that, there are all these things that kind of characterize genres and lead the path to like a better era of games. That's fine. But when you have a game that changes what it is in God of War to ironically be a lot like The Last of Us, it is a little worrisome. And like Tyler said, I'd rather have developers kind of explore. That's what I think makes Sony so special, is I think they have the most talented studios in the entire industry. And so I don't need them all copying Neil Druckmann. You have Neil Druckmann. He's the vice president of Naughty Dog now. But I want Santa Monica to do stuff. I want Sucker Punch to do stuff. I don't need them copying somebody else's ideas. I want them all to be different. When I play God of War, I'm not expecting The Last of Us because it's God of War. When I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima next year, I don't need it to be The Last of Us or God of War. I want it to be whatever the heck. I want it to kind of be that Infamous kind of style. So that's what I want from Sony. And, we've only really talked about Sony. Days Gone could be a game. We don't really know if there's going to be influence of The Last of Us in there. I'd assume there would, the more like personable tale of that character. But we've only talked about Sony. I'm sure this is going to happen in the future with other, if people were smart, or even a publisher like Microsoft with studios that they don't have as many, and I will argue that they're not as talented as some of the Sony studios. You would think they'd be like, okay, guys, like, what made The Last of Us work? Like, I want you to do that with Halo. Like, I want Halo to be a an experience like The Last of Us. So I wouldn't doubt this happens in the future. And to an extent, it's okay, but to another extent, I don't want it to happen. But in terms of God of War, in terms of this community series, it's okay for this game. I don't think I'm mad. I don't think I'm upset. I think it's going to work rather well. It's just going to be interesting, and we could be wrong. When we play this game, when I was playing the remaster, I was thinking, we only know so much about a game going in, right? So, like, for God of War PS4, like, what kind of intricacies are there going to be in that game? Like, are there going to be some cool things that's like, oh, yeah, it's still God of War. Like, we can clearly tell, like, this and that. Or is it really going to be completely reworked? I was playing the God of War 3. I forgot there was, like, the minigame where you literally play the God of War theme with, like, the PlayStation icons. And, like, you would never see that in Uncharted or Last of Us because that's not what they are. But it'll be interesting to see what God of War, the PS4 one, looks like. Have they changed really the kind of game that they want to make? And that's what's very interesting about this game coming out next week. So we want to know what you guys think. Do you think this could be too much like The Last of Us? Do you think that could be a problem going forward, not just with God of War, but with other games in the industry as well? Let us know. Next week, our topic, hopefully, we hope, as long as the embargo lifts, we want it to be discussing the reviews and first reactions to God of War. We did that for Star Wars when The Last Jedi came out. So we hope the reviews are already out. That way Tyler and I can kind of react to, like, what's the word on the street? What are people thinking about it? So we want to do that next week. Again, the game comes out next Friday. We're going to be having a giveaway for it, and I'll be live streaming it. Tyler will be playing it. We'll have tons of videos out on the game once the game's actually out. We're only a week away. Very, very exciting. Let us know if there's anything you want us to cover maybe in terms of the game for when the game actually comes out, and we'll try and do that. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you for next Wednesday's video.